Hi, I'm Richard Martin from Food Republic, and we're here for the second installment of the Talkhouse Food Republic Collaborative podcast. And in today's guests, we have Paul Kahan from Chicago, Mark Ibold from New York. We're very excited about this. These guys know each other's work very well, but have never actually met up until now. And we are here at the Sonos store on Green Street in Manhattan. They're graciously hosting us here for this podcast. It's an awesome place to come in and check out the Sonos equipment. Come on by and check it out if you're in New York or in another city that has a Sonos store, or look them up at sonos.com. But now let's talk about this podcast. Mark Ibold is an amazing musician. I think I've seen him more times than I can count. Most famous for probably playing bass with a little band called Pavement that pretty much ruled the 90s for me and a lot of other people. He later has played in Sonic Youth, and he still dabbles in bass playing, I think, around once in a while.
Technically, yes.
Technically, yes. And Paul Kahan, his brand new cookbook, The Publican, is dedicated to recipes from one of his most famous restaurants, among many in Chicago, Avec, Blackbird, Big Star. If you've been to Chicago, chances are you've eaten at one of his places because some local has said that you absolutely have to go there. So I'm going to let these guys take it. Thanks again to Sonos. Thanks again to Talkhouse. And make sure you subscribe to the Talkhouse podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, on Apple or Spotify or wherever else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You want to talk about this chicken right out of the box?
Yeah.
It's in the fridge right now?
Yeah. So I took a look at this at the cookbook yesterday because I never got to go to Publican. Well, it's been like 10 years since I've been in Chicago, but I'd always heard about it, and so I was looking at these recipes, and I love cookbooks. I buy way too many of them. And that chicken recipe and its intro, I thought, like, okay, I have to try this. So I boned out a chicken yesterday.
Spatchcocked a chicken, pulled out the breastplate.
Yeah, except it didn't really go as
planned.
As well as planned. It got a little messy, and
that's only food. That's the cool thing. You can't really mess it up.
But yeah, it's in the fridge, seasoned right now. I stuffed it into like a little plastic container.
Did you use Espelette pepper?
No, but I think that's supposed to be in the marinade. Is that in the original
you salted
season?
it.
I salted and peppered it. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
I'm going to marinate it today.
Yeah. You weren't supposed to pepper it, but I'm not going to yell at you.
Okay, good.
It's just salt.
I'm a Judy Rogers fan too.
Me too, big time.
It was cool that you mentioned her in that recipe, and I probably should have let it sit out and dry. I don't know is that the way you do it, or do you?
You can just dry it off with paper towels. I mean, was the chicken Cryovac? Was it in a bag?
I did that. I washed it and like toweled it off and everything. But you know how she likes to let stuff sit in the fridge,
let
open
it
air.
Pellicle form.
Yeah.
It certainly wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
But the salt will, sort of lock the moisture in. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
And the cool thing about cooking a chicken that way is I'm used to like roasting a chicken and then after having the roasted chicken, using the bones to make stock, but I made stock yesterday.
Nice.
And I'm going to eat the chicken a day later, which is just totally turned things on. It's
amazing. And are you going to grill it or are you going to cook it in a pan?
I'm going to cook it in a pan.
It works fine.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's a good recipe. The book is about. I've been cooking 35 years and never really had a huge desire to write a cookbook. Mm-hmm. I tried a couple times and found that I really wanted to be in the kitchen cooking. I didn't want to be sitting at a desk trying to pull things out of my thick skull. So I failed 3 times. And then finally at this point in my life, we have 9 properties, but the Publican went from being a restaurant that was based on a singular soundbite, oysters, pork, and beer. That was the idea. Mm-hmm. Hey, do you guys want to, this is me talking to my business partners, do you guys want to open up a restaurant that's all about oysters, pork, and beer?
And who's going to say no to that?
And I'd say that to chefs, and they'd be like, are you kidding me? It's the best idea ever. Yeah. And then just what we created expanded to a butcher shop across the street, and then an organic bakery around the corner. And that's sort of what the book is about. It's about the producers, it's about all the people that make the restaurant great, and really not about myself and the co-author Cosmo. So it worked out pretty good. We're very proud of it.
Yeah, it's good. There's a lot of stuff that, the fish with the potato chip crust.
Oh yeah.
That's something I would like to try.
Yeah, there was a Minnesota buddy eating at Blackbird with one of his fishing buddies, and he said, "You know what I do for shore lunch? I crumble up a bag of salt and vinegar, potato chips, and coat the fish with that." And
Yeah, that sounds pretty great.
pretty much immediately there was a recipe on the menu with that.
And then you break a rule by serving like seafood with cheese, which isn't that sort of like breaking a rule?
You know, there's a guy that broke that rule very successfully named Eric Repair.
Oh, he did?
Several times. He loves like tuna and Parmesan and.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it works pretty well.
Yeah.
I know that rule, and I abode. Is that right? I abide by it.
Yeah. In your abode.
Yeah, but who cares if it works? It works.
No, I'm dying to try that. So
So hey, well, not to change the subject, but what was the first concert you can ever remember seeing?
first concert seeing was Aerosmith.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
For me, it was Ted Nugent on the Ted Nugent tour.
That was my second concert.
We're pretty
With
much
Ted
the same
Nugent
age.
and Golden Earring. And they had Golden Earring had that song Radar Love.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And they played that. That was the last song they played. They were opening up for Ted Nugent at the Spectrum in Philadelphia. And at the end of Radar Love, when the drummer hits the last beat of it, his throne, his seat was an ejection seat. And he flew through the air and landed like on the front of the stage in like a, like Olga Corbett or something. And then
You got to be kidding me.
threw his drumsticks out to the audience.
That's
Everyone was like, wow.
That's Ready, Steve, Andy. All right, fellas, let's go.
Yeah.
Is it Steve and Andy? Is that what they say in the
Oh, yeah,
beginning of
from
Radar
Sweet-
Love? Steve, Andy. All right, fellas, let's go. It's Radar Love.
That's
yeah.
Ballroom Blitz.
Oh, you're right. Ballroom Blitz, good. You know your stuff.
Well, barely. Yeah. Suffering from Cocktailheimer's disease.
Yeah, I have the same disease. And so how did you start playing music? How did that go?
Well, yeah, I mean, pretty much every band I've been in has sort of been an extension of like my social life, friends. I've been playing with friends, and the first band was some people. I ended up a band called Dust Devils, started by a couple that moved here from England and to New York, and we were just into the same music. I saw them at shows over and over again, and at that time, that was like mid '80s, I guess. The scene in New York was a little. It seemed smaller. You would see this. I would see the same people at shows once a week.
Yep.
And also bands were more accessible. Like if you saw a band playing, you'd end up talking to them afterwards, or hanging out. In a lot of cases. And so I got to know these guys, and they asked me one night, after I think I'd had a few drinks, they asked if I played bass, and I had literally just picked up a bass at a friend's house a couple of days earlier, and I said, yeah. And then they called me the next day and said, well, we need a bass player. So, and I was like, I'm sorry I said that. I really literally have just picked up a bass. And they were like, okay, well, we'll see you around. And but then they called back again and said, why don't we just try this? And they gave me a bass, and that's sort of how I started doing it.
What kind of bass did they give you?
Gosh, I don't even know what it was. It was a real beater. I know that. But I ended
Court?
up. I had.
That's a beater, right?
That's
Sorry,
cool.
Court.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I wish
Court.
it was. I think that I didn't really even use it for very long. I think I ended up being so psyched that they were pleased with what I had done in their practice space that I went out and I bought a Fender
Precision.
It was like one of those active pickup like 80s Fender Precisions. I bought one from a friend and had that for a while.
Speaking of
I've only had two basses.
Speaking of active pickups, I was when I was in college, I studied math and computer science, believe it or not, but I got a job working at a summer camp in upstate New York, and it was a performing arts camp. I taught judo and computer science. But anyways,
cool.
we would come into the city every couple weeks, and I was with this guy who played French horn in one of the New York symphonies or chamber, some group, and we were in Washington Square Park for all the wrong reasons, looking to have some fun. And he yells out, "Hey, Jocko!" And I'm like, "Oh, holy cow, is that Jocko Pastorius?" And so we ended up spending an afternoon with Jocko Pastorius.
Oh, crazy!
Like 6 months before he died.
Whoa, doing what?
Well, we went to a bodega and got some big bottles of beer and sat in the park and drank beer and walked around, and it was pretty. I was definitely a fan.
Wow.
So it kind of speaking of active electronics, that was him and Stanley Clark were the big active.
Oh, actually, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe one of them even invented it, or maybe Stanley Clark did.
Huh.
You know, that real bent, weird, doesn't even really sound like a bass sound.
Yeah.
Sounds like a harmonic a little bit. I don't know how to describe it. You would know better than I would, but
What is that sort of what led up to the Seinfeld bass or whatever? Is that Seinfeld? Well, I mean that's a type
Exactly.
of playing, but
exactly.
that's probably on
Seinfeld.
an active pickup.
That's exactly the sound. Yeah, I'm kind of one of the things. I've always been like a gear junkie. Like when I go to shows, my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I got to go up to the front and watch them change the equipment over from one band to the next. Just I don't know. I'm just really interested in all the gear and stuff and how it sounds differently.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I wish I knew more about gear, but I can see. I mean, like pedals are something I could see you getting very very into. And do you play an instrument or?
I haven't in a long time, but I did play the drums in a couple bands growing up. Kind of a pounder.
Yeah.
I'm not. I guess I'm okay. My wife and I had a scheme at one point to start our own band. We were going to call it Old, and it was just going to be drums and bass. And she plays bass a little bit. For her 50th birthday, she's 58 now. I got her a 1966 Fender Precision bass and a Hammond B3 flip top.
Whoa.
Speaker. Still have them both, yeah. It's a really great sounding bass speaker.
Huh. Wow, that sounds great.
Have you ever played through one of those or no?
Not a B3 speaker, no.
Ampeg B3, that's what it is. Did I say
Ampeg.
Hammond?
Oh, yeah.
Duh, sorry.
Ampeg. I know that. The flip top.
Yeah, that's the one.
I had one of those, yeah.
Nice.
Those are great. They really look cool on stage.
So what years did you play with Sonic Youth?
I'm not really sure when I would have started. Maybe 2004 to like when they finished or stopped playing.
So I must have seen you
probably like about 6 years.
I must have seen you play at Pitchfork in Chicago when they played the whole Daydream Nation album from start to finish. On day
and you
one
know
on
what?
Friday.
I was playing with them then, but for that they played Daydream Nation as the original lineup. And then for encores, we would play the more recent songs, and I would come out and play on those. So those were really easy shows. I would just get to watch them play those songs. And
that was a very memorable show for me. I enjoyed it immensely, even though you didn't play the whole time.
Oh yeah, no, I was happily watching also.
Nice.
Yeah. So what about? Have you been working in restaurants since you were little? Like I started working in restaurants when I was 16.
My dad had a delicatessen in Chicago when I was growing up, a Jewish deli. So I spent time there. And then, cooked a lot at home. Started when I was a kid, I got really interested in making bread.
And something I've never really been that great at.
I got off on the wrong foot a little bit. I went to college for math and computer science because I thought I should. And I was not a very good student, partied a lot in college. One of my things, the reason why I have a giant record collection is because after I would take a test, I would be ridden with such guilt because I did so poorly that I would go buy records every time to make myself feel better. Yeah. And there were some great record stores where I went to school, so I would just buy a shit ton of records, and I still do to this day. So I've been buying records for 40 or 50 years, 40 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 55, so since I was about 15, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And at a certain point, I just thought, I think I want to be a chef. And I remember telling my dad, I was working at his smoked fish factory at the time, and he said, you just went to school for 5 years. I think you're crazy, but I'll support you in whatever you did.
You did do 5 years of I was on the math and computer science?
Yeah, the 5-year plan. I graduated.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
I went in as a physics major and then just was like, I took like all my math classes, but then just started veering off and taking language classes and art stuff, and then it was sort of the same thing.
It was
buying
over.
records and not
Partying
doing
a little
very
bit,
well.
chasing girls. Yeah, but you know, I was fortunate enough when I was done with school. I met my wife, and she had a friend that was a pastry chef in a restaurant, and I started as a prep cook and never looked back. And I just wanted to learn everything that I touched, you know, and tasted. And it was a really good kitchen because
Where was this?
it was in Chicago. It was
Yeah.
a little neighborhood place called Metropolis Cafe. And there were some really great cooks that worked there that came out of that kitchen. It was different than restaurants now. I mean, you would actually cook food and taste food, and we would change the menu a lot. And so you know, and basically any culture that you wanted, if you wanted to make, you know, a homemade cannelloni, make it, try it. Let's see if it ends up on the menu. And so it was
They would do that kind of stuff. So that's pretty.
yeah, we would do everything. And so I learned, you know, through trial and error, through books, and like I said, have kind of never looked back. There's definitely there's been a certain amount of luck in my career, you know, kind of right place at the right time.
Yeah. Well.
But
Yeah. Join the
I'm
club.
looking at myself in the mirror. But yeah, and you know, at a certain point in my career, I didn't want to work for someone anymore. I was tired of it, and met a guy who was a customer in a restaurant where I was the chef, and he loved what I did, and he had signed a lease for a space, and the rest is kind of history for me. It's that was Blackbird, and we're about to have our 20th anniversary there.
Oh, wow.
December 1st. So knock on wood, we're still going strong with 9, and then we're opening 2 more places this year, and then.
So how do you manage that? I mean, in New York, it seems like that. You know, I work in a restaurant that is, you know, in a neighborhood that's changing so much, and you know, the restaurant business here seems like it's really intense. You know, especially with real estate prices. And is that the same in Chicago? Or are you able to?
It's the same.
Yeah,
it's the same. I think, you know, I'm fortunate to have a really great partnership. We started with 4 guys, and really, those 4 guys we're still working together. I mean, it's only been a couple times where I've had my hands around the throat of one of them on the ground, shaking him like I wanted to kill him. But
what do they do? What do the partners do? Are they like?
They each have sort of a different area of focus. One guy is all about the wine and spirits. Another guy runs the first 2 restaurants. The partnership has changed up a little bit, but there are constants throughout all of the restaurants. So everyone works. There's no one that just sits around and counts the money, which that doesn't really happen so much.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool that everyone's working, and it probably is part of what helps make the whole thing.
Yeah, I think at this
continue.
point the funnest part is conceptualizing new restaurants. We just do every one of them. We do it because we're passionate about it. Like you haven't been to Chicago recently enough, but we have a place called Big Star, and yes, it is named after. We were looking at a stack of records. Oh, you went to Big Star?
Yeah. Is it almost 10 years old?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
8 years old, maybe 9.
Yeah, I think I went there in 2010.
Yeah, a lot of rock and roll guys end up there, but that was sort of about. It's true. That was sort of about. My wife and I used to have these parties, and I had these old Klipsch Hearsay speakers. I don't know if you know those.
Yeah.
They're nice. They're loudspeakers, you know, paper cone.
Yeah.
And I would drag those speakers out in the yard and play records for the parties, and the parties grew, and you know, it just had those speakers had this certain sound that I just loved, and it reminded me of an old man bar. And so we found this space, which was an old gas station, and the idea was, my business partner Terry says that it was my idea to do tacos, and I think I wanted to do greasy burgers, and he wanted to do tacos. But at any rate, the music became just as important, maybe more important than the food. And so we were like, you know, this says who I am, was like, we were trying to figure out a way that we could smash whiskey into tequila. Like where geographically or historically do those 2 things meet? And we came up with Bakersfield, California. You know, migrant workers coming up from Mexico to work in the fields, most fertile place in America. And then there was the outlaw country scene started in Bakersfield with Buck Owens and, and Merle and all those guys. And so...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And there's some really cool record labels that came out of Bakersfield. And so that's kind of where that idea was born. And we have a record player, and we have tons of music guys that work at that restaurant. And for years they've been just going out and following every little record label and nook and cranny, and you can go in there and then, even a guy like yourself, you'd sit in the bar in there and go like, who is this? This is incredible. And it's might be some weird Nashville or some weird Bakersfield country guy, and they go on tangents. They'll go, Rolling Stones. They'll go. They'll play Exile on Main Street or whatever makes sense. There's really no rules, but it's just sort of music that's all rooted in that. And
do you ever go into one of the places and hear some music that you don't like and think like, why are they playing this? Or...
Actually, my business partner and I, Terry, we have meetings.
Okay.
And those meetings are where we go get drunk together and talk about maybe new ideas or just maybe nonsense. But we often go in and are like, they can't play this. This isn't right.
Yeah.
And the next day we usually have...
I feel like I hear inappropriate music in restaurants all the time. I think I might overreact to that a little bit, but just coming from like going to restaurants in Europe where there's no music playing.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like weird music can get in the way of like having a good meal.
Yeah, I struggle with the sound systems in our restaurants. Some are really good and some maybe leave a little bit to be desired. Sorry, guys that install the sound systems, but that's a part of it too. Sometimes the music's just too forward and in my ears too much, and it really does affect the meal. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to hear gangster rap when I'm having dinner. It just doesn't work for me personally. But
yeah, I mean, I don't really want to hear Pavement or Sonic Youth when I'm having dinner.
Yeah,
personally. That's sort of a funny thing where I work at the Jones, because it's a place that has traditionally had a lot of people that have really been super interested in music working there. And there was a guy that put together this incredible jukebox for years and years and years. And I find when I go there, I don't even play my own music. I just play old-timey jazz music, because
That's cool.
I feel like that in the background is like kind of a nice thing. It doesn't really interfere with anything.
Like old-timey, like Bill Brunsey or something, like New Orleans jazz? Or?
Oh, yeah, like all kinds of old... I don't even know what a lot of it is. A lot of it, the guy that put the jukebox together put it all on an iPod, and I just put it on jazz. And I also find that when I listen to that, since I don't know jazz very well, it all sounds good to me, I don't really find anything objectionable.
So you never focus on a particular jazz bass player?
No, I don't. I listen to whole bands. I don't really listen to specific instruments that much, unless something's really out there and standing out, But I find that happens more with vocals, I guess, than
really
for me.
This conversation makes me think of Charlie Mingus.
Yeah,
like that. That guy. I mean, he's like a genius. Like the bass is like vocals.
Oh yeah.
But you're a bass player. I'm not. So.
Yeah, but I listen. But I don't really. I really don't listen for bass. I listen to everything.
Nice.
And
do you remember song titles?
No, I'm terrible.
Album titles?
Terrible.
See, it's like I'm looking in the mirror. It's like I can't remember song titles. Like I was like, I wonder if he's going to ask me about any Pavement or Sonic Youth questions, like just in conversation.
Are you familiar with the song that
right?
I used to perform?
I was like, Crooked Rain. Like I remember, like when I looked it up, looking at that album cover for so long, but I don't remember the title of the songs or of the album or anything.
Yeah, me neither. It's terrible. It's embarrassing, actually.
Yeah.
Do
you know any Chicago bass players that you like?
Chicago bass players? Geez. Again,
Sorry. Let's change the subject.
I'm sure that, how about Dave Sims? But he's not really from Chicago. I think he's from Texas. But he was in the band The Jesus Lizard.
Oh, yeah.
Who are actually, I think, about to do some shows again. Did you ever see them live?
I did.
It's like one of the best all-time live bands.
I almost got spit on.
Well, you're lucky it was spit.
There was a lot of standing on the monitor, wafting hawkers into the crowd. And I was up near the front, so that was unfortunate.
I wonder, what those shows are going to be like. But I'm looking forward to seeing that. But I thought that guy was a great bass player. But I mean, honestly, I really don't pay attention to specific playing. I kind of get into the whole show.
Yeah, I was only asking because one of my favorite Chicago bands of all time was this band called 11th Dream Day.
Oh yeah,
do you remember those guys?
Yeah.
Doug McCombs is the bass player, and I just love his sound.
Yeah. Now I can't isolate that right now, but I remember really liking that band.
Really good band.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you want to talk more about food?
Yes.
What do you like to cook besides? I know you're making this chicken. Do you just?
I go through phases, you know. It's like actually, in a way, it's like listening to music. You know, I don't have like somebody will say like, "What's your favorite thing to cook?" I'll be like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
You know, like it's why I probably never got a tattoo. You know, I like images, and I can't imagine having the same one all the time. I'd be like listening to the same record every day. You know, I go through phases. So, yeah, I mean, I will have like at a given time, like maybe for like a period of like a year, like a cookbook that I refer to.
So do you,
I remember that Judy
Rogers cookbook.
The Zuni book was one of those that lasted for quite a long time.
That was a very influential book for me as well.
Yeah, but yeah, so I just cook all kinds of stuff, you know.
Nice.
I fall for trends, you know. Like right now, I would say that like I'm a little more interested in doing stuff that's not as meaty.
Okay.
Which I think is a trend right now.
I'd say
at least
so.
in New York, it is. We have like this amazing. Have you ever been to Superiority Burger?
Yep. Yeah, I know Brooks.
So
Ex-rock and roll
you know,
guy.
I think what he's doing is like
Awesome.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, he did a
And,
pop up at Big Star. He
he did?
came and served when his book came out, or maybe they were. I don't remember.
Oh, the
but
dessert book.
yeah, but,
Okay.
but he served his veggie burger when the dessert book came out. Maybe
he
it was
did?
a precursor
Cool.
to Superiority Burger.
Yeah.
He's a cool dude.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like New Yorkers are really lucky to be able to go into a place like that and get such great quality stuff, just sort of handed to them over a counter for, you know, $20. You can have like a really nice array of things. And
Nice. I think we're already in the backlash. I think the backlash to vegetables is starting to happen.
Oh, yeah?
You know, like you said, oh yeah, the healthy eating vegetable
Yeah.
phase.
Yeah.
I think it's almost full circle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I mean, so many people come up to me and they say, you know, I haven't been to the public and I'm not a real big meat eater. And we the biggest
Carrots
section,
are the biggest, aren't you?
Yeah,
Your
the
barbecued
biggest-
carrots, like
yeah,
a
yeah.
really big thing.
yeah, one of the biggest. It's the biggest section in the book, the vegetable section,
Yeah.
and it's probably the
I
biggest
noticed
section.
that leads off. That's the beginning of the book, really.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
and it's probably the biggest section on the menu. You know, the menu's divided into three parts: vegetables, seafood, you know, fish and seafood, and meat. Mm-hmm. And they both sides of the menu lead off with things that we just get. Like one side is oysters, the other side is artisanal hams from all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we just get it and slice it, or get it and pop and boat and serve them. You know, like zero manipulation items.
Mm-hmm.
But the vegetables have really, you know, when we started. Maybe it was 3 vegetable items, and now I think there's just at least 10 every night on the menu. And it's, you know, creative stuff, seasonal stuff, but and those are probably the easiest recipes in the book as well.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. So man, I hope it comes close to that Judy Rogers slot. That would be incredible. There's a lot to work through in there.
Yeah, I like that. I haven't been to his restaurant in a while, but Jonathan Waxman, is Barbuda still open?
Oh,
You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
I just went out to dinner with him yesterday.
Oh, you did?
I did. He's a
That
good pal.
potato recipe looks pretty good. Like really, potatoes cooked 3 times, basically.
Yeah.
That seems pretty great.
One of our cooks asked the question once, where do you keep the Waxman potatoes? Like they thought the variety of potato was the Waxman potato, not how we actually
That would be a good
cook
name for a
them.
potato. Yeah.
But yeah, he's, I think he's one of the greatest, like simple, straightforward food guys around, period. Like there's just no time for shenanigans. Like his chicken recipe, I'm like, Jonathan, what's the secret? It's a great chicken and it's salt and pepper. And, you know, basting the bird with a lot of the fat that it generates as you cook it. But that's it. Nothing more to it. And it's honestly, I don't know if it's quite as good as the publican chicken, but it's a good chicken.
Well, we shall see tonight. I got to get some Espelette, though.
Yeah.
I've kind of forget. Is that like related to paprika, or is it kind of like
Well, it's related in that it's chili pepper, but it's from the Basque region, which is where's the Basque region? Is it the northern?
yeah, sort of near the French
northernmost?
border?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is the chilies are super wet, and it's just they're just dried in the sun and then ground a little on the coarse side. It's Appellation origin control, so it's controlled very tightly by the government. But it's just a variety. It's like, have you ever had Urfa pepper?
Yeah.
Do you know about this spice shop in New York called Le Boite?
I know of it. I haven't been
You've
there.
read about
though.
it?
Yeah.
Got to get some
Have
of
you
that
checked it
shit.
out?
It's insane. Yeah, Leor's a good friend, the guy that owns it. We
Yeah.
did some consulting work together, but you'll impress your friends and neighbors with spices. The stuff's so delicious. Like he does one called Kahan, which is the name of a town in Brittany, and it's sort of the flavors of Kahan. So it's beautiful salt with fennel seed, fennel pollen, orange, very subtle. I use it on just about everything. Meat, fish. It's outrageous.
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of steer away from people's spice mixes, but it sounds like his are really great.
Yeah, I hate spice mixes too, but his are, he has one that's called mish mish. We actually do a recipe with it in the book, and it's a spice mix that's supposed to emulate the flavor of an apricot.
Oh,
so it's like saffron, crystallized honey, just stuff that you wouldn't expect. And his spice blends there's one called Pure Poivre. It's just a collection of different kinds of peppercorns, but he gets the highest quality stuff and treats it really well. You can get singular spices there, but it's like in Hell's Kitchen. I would stop in.
Have you ever been to this one in Paris called Tir Salin?
No.
It's like a really old spice shop in Paris, and they make some mixes. I've bought their Ras El Hanout is a really great, pretty exotic version of that. I think they have their own saffron fields in Iran.
Wow.
So they were kind of known for saffron and sort of exotics like vanilla and stuff. But it's a pretty cool place because it's really old and it's been there for a long time.
Lior got his jam from this chef named Olivier Rollinger. You ever heard that name before?
No.
Amazing guy. Like if you look up the name and read his story, he was a businessman of some sort in Saint-Malo in France, which I believe is in Brittany. Yeah. It's a cool town. Yeah. And he got jumped and nearly beaten to death. And I know sounds horrible, but he convalesced, and as he was convalescing, he decided that he was going to change his career and he was going to sort of follow his dream to be a chef. And I was fortunate enough, Lior set me up, because Lior did his externship, one of the few people that's ever really studied spice blending with this guy. He set me up to have breakfast with him at his restaurant. He actually, when he got 3 Michelin stars, he closed his restaurant. But he's very much the spice chef. The ideas of his food sort of follow spice roots. And I sat down to breakfast with this guy, and he was like looking over the horizon and talking about where cinnamon comes from and where, the origins of spice and culture, and super fascinating man. And so there's a lot more to it than, hey, I want to make something for steak and throw in a bunch of crap together. This guy's like...
I think that there's a sourcing thing going on over there too. That in... I just noticed, like, when you have like cumin in a restaurant in Paris, it has like more of a
aroma.
I don't know if that means that we're just getting cumin that's been sitting in warehouses for a long time.
Age is super important. Like fresh spices make a big difference.
But or if it's just that they have different suppliers, and because I'd love to learn about that, like where to get, because I love cumin. I would like to know where the best cumin comes from. But does maybe this?
He's your guy.
Yeah, he is. Okay.
Yeah, you'll get a kick out of going there.
Yeah. I think that Brooks uses some of that guy's stuff too.
I think he does. Yeah. A lot of the big names do. Like he does stuff for Eric Ripert and for Danielle, and does a lot of stuff for that Paul Kahn guy in Chicago.
So that's another thing I noticed from your book, that you get a lot of. And how does a restaurant afford to like get oysters from?
It's more like, how do we not afford to get them is the question.
Yeah.
Never really fancied myself as being a spectacular cook. I've gardened for a large part of my life, and when you go out in the yard and you pick, teeny little leaves or this, that, or the other thing, or fresh vegetables out of your garden, makes all the difference in the world. So I feel like sourcing and those relationships are really important to us, and really, it's more like, how do we not afford it? I mean, we might get these chocolate persimmons from Penryn Orchard, and we profile the man that we get those persimmons from, and you put them on a plate, and they're transcending. They're just incredible, and so it just works in the equation for that restaurant. I mean, we're busy. It's a big restaurant. It's really busy. We've transitioned to almost all organic produce there, really because. I think it's better for the earth, and it tastes better. But ultimately, we just try to run a really tight business and be really smart. And the book is really about the fact that we have this network set up, and on a different day we'll get different things. So twice a week we get seafood from Monterey Bay. We don't get. I mean, a good answer to your question is we don't get number one center cut loin of tuna. We get sand dabs, which people, unless you're from San Francisco, they think is a garbage fish.
Yeah,
and
my
they're
uncle
amongst
loves
the
this.
most delicious things I've ever had. We get all the oily fish, kind of harking back to old times. We love mackerel and we love sardines and all those things. And those, they're really cheap. By the time the sardines get harvested or caught, they go through a middleman and they come to Chicago, they're more expensive than if we get them and add on the shipping from our sources in California and on the East Coast. So it's really not as tricky as you think. The middle guys take a huge markup.
Yeah, I would just think that it would be, hard to maintain that, or I guess you have to,
It's tough in the winter,
makes
man.
things expensive
And I think there's a part in the book where I talk about that in the wintertime, all our food is kind of piles of brown stuff because there's not a lot that's fresh. And although those windows have been steadily expanding, like we have guys in Southern Illinois that grow in hoop houses so we can get great things all year.
I remember going up to Montreal and going into the basement of Joe Beef, and they had all these little grow lights, and like they're growing all their microgreens. This was a pretty long time ago. Like,
You sure
probably
they
like
probably
12.
pulled some trays of microgreens out and hid their weed. Those guys are great guys too. That's a special place.
Oh boy, is it!
Yeah,
I've had some really great times there.
yeah, epic meals.
Oh, that's a good food. Do you get to travel and eat?
I do a little less now that I'm getting a little bit older. I don't really so much have the patience, but there was a 10-year, window there where I just traveled all over the place to cook at events. I used to go to the Festival Lumiere, which is this winter food festival in Montreal.
Oh yeah,
they're a hardy sort, man. They're like out partying around bonfires, and
it's the coldest place I've ever been.
it's a different kind of cold.
Yeah.
But yeah, Montreal's one of my favorite food cities in the whole world, and have been there many times to cook and to eat and to just hang out.
Yeah, there's all kinds of great stuff there. Oh, you even mentioned that the chicken
Yeah,
is
that was at a-
sort of based on one of those Portuguese chicken places in Montreal.
My business partner and I walked in a place on a corner. I forget the name of it. Sat there, and the guy was literally smoking a cigarette, cooking chickens on a grill.
That's
and
amazing.
They were spatchcocked, and I asked him, "Hey, what's in this recipe?" Because it was delicious. And he said, "If I tell you, I'll have to kill you."
Yeah.
That line. But I went back home and started working on sort of my version of that, and I think it's better than the Chicken Shack. But I rarely have moments of cockiness, but the people really love that chicken. So
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try it tonight. I'm going to try it. I should be able to pull it off.
did you get a good bird or just an average Joe chicken?
I got a D'Artagnan
Oh, that's a good
organic
bird.
chicken.
Sure.
From the co-op. I'm a member of the Park Slope Food Co-op,
Nice.
which is I have mixed feelings about. But
How many years have you lived in New York?
I've lived here since '83.
Wow.
And mostly in Manhattan, and then like in the mid 2000s, I moved to Queens. And now I live in Brooklyn. So.
You said you were hanging out at bars, seeing music in the '80s. What were the places you hung out at in the '80s to see bands?
CBGB's.
CBGB's, of course. Yeah.
Which, in some ways was very overrated, but they had some great shows there, but they also had a lot of terrible shows there.
Yeah.
For a while there, they were having, they had a really good run. I'm sort of the second CBGB's generation, I would say. I don't know if you would call it a generation, but I missed out on the...
Like tail end of the Ramones?
I missed out on that period, television and whatever. But that sort of early, like, indie rock time, they had some, they would have a good show there almost once a week, and they had a great sound system. So
Nice.
it was good, very loud, but really good sounding. Where else? Then there were sort of like some somewhat larger places like the Ritz. Maxwell's is the place that was really the best. They had super consistent booking and good bands playing there all the time. And there was a great record store there, so my friends and I would go record shopping there twice a week. That's where I got turned on to Australian and New Zealand stuff, like in the mid '80s,
nice.
like the Clean and the Chills and stuff, and then we would go to Maxwell's.
Wow. And how many years ago did Maxwell's close?
It is actually still open.
Oh, it's still open?
Yeah.
What was the guy's name that owned it?
Steve Fallon is the guy that I kind of remember.
Kind of a short, chubby-ish guy.
Possibly.
Maybe balding at this point.
Yeah, possibly.
This is interesting radio.
Everyone's balding at this point.
You're doing pretty good. I went to see maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago. I went to see one of the Hanukkah shows that Yola Tango does.
Oh yeah, those
were there. Those were great.
Yeah.
And I thought someone told me they were closing, but what do I know?
Was it with comedy? Was there a comedy opening? Or
There was
it
a comedy
band?
opening. Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
Huh. I think the night before the Feelies opened up, and
Wow.
I sure missed out.
Yeah.
I mean, the comedy was good, but it wasn't the Feelies.
Yeah.
Which I saw them this year at Pitchfork, and it's like an interesting syndrome. They're older, and I think the Meat Puppets are a little older. This year I saw the Meat Puppets and the Feelies both at outdoor festivals, and the first 3 songs were so bad. I was like, oh my God, I feel so bad for these guys. But then their joints must get warmed up, because both of them, the Meat Puppets played a song off Meat Puppets 2, which I love that album. I think it's like a
great record.
real country.
Yeah.
But and then they went into this. They just went insane, and it was an incredible show.
Oh, that's great.
And the same thing, man. By the time the Feelies were done, they played a medley of all the songs off, or most of the songs off their first album, Crazy Rhythms. That lightning fast. It's just insane. And they didn't miss a beat. My jaw was to the ground. It was amazing.
I haven't seen recent shows by those bands, but I've heard good stuff about it. Yeah, they were both like regular bands at Maxwell's. They would constantly show up there.
Yeah, and actually the Feelies, as their albums come out, they're really good.
New
Still,
ones?
Yeah, new ones. They're still pushing them out.
Huh.
Check them out at your local record store soon.
I will. Are we supposed to wind this down now? Or?
I'm gonna jump in.
Okay. You told us to babble. We did.
Yeah. And don't worry, if you millennials out there didn't catch the references to Jaco Pastorius, this will be annotated later. But I just wanted, before we go, I wanted to ask you guys, I had one question on my mind for each of you. Paul, I'll start with you. Who's the hardest chef you've ever worked for? Like, threw things at you or gave you a rough time in the kitchen?
You know, I've never worked for one of those guys. I mean, like, I think everyone that works for me would say that I really nurture them, and I'm not a screamer. It's just pointless to me. I mean, I get uptight, and probably my weapon is Jewish guilt. You know, I'll be like, what, are you trying to sabotage me? Are you crazy? But I really, Rick Bayless was really intense, but I never worked for anyone like that was psycho. Not at all. So I know it's a bad answer. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It's better for you that you never got abused. But Mark, what about for you? Been on tour with some pretty big personalities. Any musicians that's been hard to work with?
No one was really that hard. And I've always been in bands with my friends, so that's never been a problem. I've seen some poor behavior by some other bands, but yeah. I don't want to. I have
you
seen
guys
poor
failed the
behavior.
test.
This is good radio.
Out there,
I'm
when you go to
gonna-
those festivals,
We'll
there's
turn
some
the
poor
cameras
behavior.
off, and then I'm going to get it out of them, and you can check us out on Talkhouse and Food Republic for the real scoop here. But thanks so much to Mark and Paul for taking the time to come in, and please buy Paul's cookbook, the Publican Cookbook.
Cheers to the Publican.
And always listen to Pavement and Sonic Youth because it's good for your health. Thanks.